Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Wide Open Throttle. We have the gang of usual suspects from MotorTrend plus a very special guest. Ian Callum, Director of Design at Jaguar. And Ian, you're here on a roadshow for the F-Type, coming around California. It's nice of you to pop in and say hello.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome.
How's the reception to the car been?
It's been astounding. You know, we knew it'd be quite good, but we didn't think it'd be as good as it has been worldwide. I was just commenting this morning with the press we've had on it. It's been fantastic, so I'm delighted.
Now, I've probably been writing about the coming of the F-Type for 20 years.
Yeah, and I've been waiting for 20 years.
What took you so long?
Circumstances, you know, when I first arrived at Jag, and you remember it was back 13 years ago, the first thing I wanted to do was get the F-Type, or would-be two-seater sports car, off the road. But we had so much to do in the meantime. We had to reinvent the brand in many ways. We had to replace the S-Type, the XJ, the XK as well. And after we'd done that, we finally got around to the F-Type. And so that's why we've waited to get the foundations in place, to get the company back to a good place, and then we put the icing on the cake. It's been worth it. I think it's been worth the wait. I absolutely believe without a two-seater sports car that the brand is not complete. And I think now we've got that in the middle. For me, it is the middle of the brand, and everything else circles around that.
Let me ask, so when you go to design something like this, so you know, XK120, C, D, E-Type, like how much are those older Jags in your mind as you're laying this thing down on paper or on clay or whatever?
Probably quite a lot, because they are anyway. You know, I'm very aware of where we are in the timeline and what our responsibility is. But I don't feel hugely beholden to them specifically. You know, and we have a set of rules at Jaguar Design that says this is how you design a Jaguar, and if you do it properly, the lineage will come through naturally. So I didn't feel that pressure that we had to copy anything or try and capture something specific. It's about atmosphere. So as long as we capture the atmosphere of those cars.
Well, how hard is that? I mean, you know, I think you once told me that everyone has an opinion as to what a Jaguar should look like.
We certainly do.
How? That guy's special.
We'll get to this.
He has one?
We'll get to this. Oh, don't worry. He might get up and run out.
But how hard is it to escape that sort of, you know, that being bound by the history of the brand, and everyone has this vision of what a Jag should look like? Well,
you know, there's a lot of persuasion to be done, and I certainly had a lot of persuasion to do when I first arrived at Jaguar. And I made that comment, you know, guys, you've all got opinions. This is to the board, but I have one too, and this is what it's based on. And where I feel very fortunate, and more fortunate than most, is that I grew up in the 60s when Jaguar was, you know, king of the castle. It was producing some of the most exotic, sexiest cars in the world. I remember them being that way for specific reasons, because even at that age, I understood why cars were the way they were. And so I just referenced the values those cars had. And I always stuck to that, and I think that has always been my key. And never be persuaded to go and follow some other path, because you know that's what Lions created. You know, people ask why do these Jaguars work so much, and it's about extremity with taste. You know, everything that Lions did was just every part of what he did was stretched to the limit. His cars were always lower, the bonnets, their hoods were always longer, the fenders were always more sculptured. He always exaggerated something, and that's why the E-Type. And that's what we try to do today, but in the modern world, that's so hard.
You physically couldn't build an E-Type. It wouldn't pass any of the regulations.
It would pass nothing from one bumper to the rear. It'd fail just about everything, except for wheel coverage, of course. It would certainly pass that.
I think there's only one of us at this table who's actually owned a Jaguar sports car. That was you, Kim, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've been an E-Type.
And you just drove the F-Type at the launch.
Yes, that's right.
So,
that's right.
Render your verdict, sir, please.
I was very, very impressed. The two six-cylinder cars with different horsepowers between the two, and tires and a few other detail things. Those are real sports cars. They have a delightful turn-in. I think the steering turn-in is just terrific.
What did you said? It was like you were vacuumed to the road?
Yeah, it's like the nose of the
line?
car is vacuumed into the corners, just like it wants to go around the corner. A lot of cars, there's that initial reservation about turning in, and that car does not have that.
The pivot, the center of gravity pivot is in the middle of the car. You feel it. It kind of.
The V8 feels heavier, and it's more of a muscle car. I mean, it's just it feels a little heavier, but it has such tremendous power. And both of them make these tremendous sounds. When you lift off the throttle, the crackle and pop and snap and all those sounds are just...
All calculated, by the way.
Well, you know, it made all these sounds, and during the engineering discussions, I asked an engineer afterwards, so how much work went into creating these sounds? He said, oh, not much, you know, we just did one or two things. And I said, yeah, right. That doesn't happen by accident.
There's a lot of algorithms in there, believe you me. I mean, I've been through the sound booth with these guys, and they've got computers with...
Through the sound booth.
So you actually tune the car to make those noises that we enthusiasts love to hear.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, it's a natural noise. It's just how you can control it. You know, it's not. There's not like some loudspeaker out there. It's real.
Do you get to provide input on that? I mean, that's not traditional design, I would say.
Not really, but you know, we're a close-knit business in Jaguar. We all know each other, and you know, I asked Mike Cross, you know, how's the sound of the pipes going, and you know, and I want to know. It helps me to be enthused about the car a little bit more.
So what's the thing you're proudest of with the F-Type? The thing that you, in terms of design, that you achieved?
The one area I think is probably the most exotic is the tail of the car. You know, because it's probably the one area you got most freedom, to be honest, and we got lots of shape in it, which is traditionally Jaguar. You know, lots of shape. I always say a Jaguar should be more like an egg than a cube, which makes it more exciting to look at. And I always say that these design cues, if you pull them from the past, that's fine, but they have to belong to the present. And if somebody has no reference to an E-Type Jag, it doesn't matter. You know, they'll see for what it is. If they do, they might smile. That's enough. That's fine.
So I just drove a 420G, which is Mark 10, and and that's actually where the XJ looks come from. That was 62, and the 420, the XJ was 68 or whatever it was, 66. And you know, with the even headlights and the big mouth and everything, and it's great looking. I like this new XJ, and you know, it's not slavish, and just the proportions, like it's slammed. And
I like the idea you think it's slammed because the car is actually the same height as its competitors. It has to be because, you know, within reason we have to package similar sized people. People are getting bigger, by the way. In height and width, but the slam look is about the proportions of the glass, you know, and again, to the point of extremity, that's what Lions would have probably done to try and disguise the fact it's actually quite a tall car. So we reduce the glass, we give it some visual length, and that was the objective, was to give this car some visual length within the constraints of a modern package. If you look at the car platform it was derived from as a previous XJ, I mean, like chalk and cheese. The previous XJ was a classic design. It was very beautiful. It was nicely proportioned, but it wasn't dramatic enough, and I think a Jaguar deserves to be dramatic.
Okay, so we just touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know, modern regulations, you know, safety regulations, it really does give you a much more limited envelope to work in as a designer. I mean, you know, pedestrian protection is raising the front
crash. Interior, head trajectories are a big deal. The amount of impact space you have to have inside the car, it makes the car, that's why cars got bigger. Regulations and safety regulations are getting tougher and tougher, and we've got 2 or 3 factors to deal with. We've got European laws, which have a set of rules unto themselves. You've got the US laws, and we have to deal with them all as a world brand. But the thing is this, design is all about taking the facts, taking all the inputs, taking all the things you have to deal with and facing them head on and designing around them. There's no point in thinking, well, ignore that. We'll do a concept car, we can ignore all the pedestrian safety stuff and the front overhangs, we'll make a great looking car, because the reality is the law of physics will not allow you to do that until we come up with unobtainium that does it all for us, you know?
Right. Or until you get people out of the cars.
Until we get people. It's a shame we have to put people in our cars, because without them life would be easy.
Well, one of the details with this car was getting the hood lower, and the over-engine brace is not there.
It's not there.
It's
around the
entirely
front.
different structure that goes around the front of the car to give that structural rigidity between the corners, and that's very unusual.
Yeah, it is. You know, I work in environments at Jaguar where our engineers have got huge empathy towards what we want to do in terms of shape. They really do. Of course, you know, it's not always straightforward. There are minor scuffles occasionally, and so we work through it millimeter by millimeter, day by day.
You know, you said design is important at Jaguar, so you get to, you know, what you say has some more weight to it, but like, you know, because I don't want to mention names, but there's a car maker out there where I'm friends with the designer who says, oh yeah, we work hand in hand with engineering, and then you look at the finished supercar product, and it's pretty clear that design's the very last guy through the door. And so I'm just wondering, like
I'm curious now.
I'll tell you as soon as the camera's off. You can guess. But so I'm just wondering, do you ever get to tell the engineers, no, go back, rethink this?
Yeah, I mean, we say, look, there's a chief program engineer that looks after the program, and in this case, it was a guy called Ian Callum, and Ian and I are good friends, and we can literally sit having a cup of coffee and say, Ian, this isn't going to work. I need your help. I say, let's leave it with me. We'll see what we can do. And so there's a huge empathy, genuine empathy.
So your competitors are doing lots of interesting things. They're expanding their model ranges. I mean, we're seeing a move into small segment cars. Is it possible to do a small Jaguar that looks like a Jaguar? And I'm talking, like a CLA-sized car or a BMW 1 Series sized car.
Yeah, I have to tell you, there's nothing like that in the plan at the moment, but we are clearly investigating everything for the brand, because there's one thing I think we've been quite open about, is that we are going to expand the range. We have to. We can't survive long term in 2 or 3 cars.
Okay, just shifting gears a little bit. Getting to be a car designer is almost, someone once told me, it's like being the rock star of the car industry. And
not enough hair for that. I wish.
But you've also got a brother who runs a fairly large design department. Is there, Murray's at Ford, is there any competition between the two of you?
No, honestly, none whatsoever. We're very good friends. We don't see enough of each other, unfortunately, but we have a very similar attitude to design. And I think if you look at our work, we both work in a very structured way when we design stuff. No, we don't talk about each other's work much, other than, nice car.
What about designs outside of the car industry? Are you a fan of, are there industrial designs that you like, or you like cameras or watches? Or
yeah,
like,
I do. I'm never brand specific. If I like something, which upsets a few of my kind of luxury-minded friends, is that such and such a watch? I says, I don't know, I just like the look of it. But I love industrial design, product design. I'm actually designing a watch at the moment for myself, which should be a bit of fun.
So watches and furniture is, how does that play into, say, the interiors of cars like the F-Type?
Quite a lot, I suppose. When you get the interior, it's a completely different ball game from the exterior, because it's an environment. It has to work functionally. You can't escape the fact that things need to be operable. When we designed this car, I wanted the functions of the car to be very specific. In modern design, it's very easy to have a nice piece of, shiny black plastic with cut-in buttons that are all flushed out. And if it's a static hi-fi, that's great. But for a car that you're driving at over 100 miles an hour in some countries, of course, you need to put your hand in something very quickly and operate it, and not have to go looking for it, because, you need to do it instinctively. And so we've deliberately designed the interior of this with a very mechanical feel. The switches are all different, so you can find them easily. And there's a little bit of that slightly reminiscent look of the rocker switches in the middle.
Which is like the E-Type.
Which is a bit like the E-Type, which, unashamedly, we put that in there. So it's great fun, but it has to work. And the tactile feel which we get involved with of every switch really matters as well. So it's a very mechanical, very technical interior, complemented by this lovely sweeping line that comes around and kind of envelops the driver in the cockpit of the car. So a bit of fun.
All right, well, Ian Callum, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for watching Wide Open Throttle. We'll see you next week. Bye.